Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Chaithanya Sohan, and she's here today to share with us her new book, America Deconstructed. Now, Chaithanya immigrated to America from India in 2001. She currently works as an electrical engineer in the Silicon Valley. Chaithanya graduated from San Jose State University with a bachelor's in electronic engineering and a master's in electrical engineering from Santa Clara University. So let's welcome to the show Chaithanya Sohan.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
You know, what a pleasure to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book. And I know books are always, they take time to develop, but it couldn't be more timely than now to have your book here.
Yeah, when we started writing the book, we didn't really think much of it. We just thought that, we were trying to write a little fun book talking about experiences of immigrants, and things changed since 2013 when we started the book, and it's become a timely book now, for sure.
Well, yeah, without getting into politics and what have you, but when we look at, because, I come from a family of immigrants. I'm pretty sure you can't bump down the street with anyone who doesn't, So when we look at this, I've got to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
My co-author Shaima and I, we went to college together, and, we were both new immigrants in America. She's a refugee and I'm an immigrant. And we'd often talk about funny instances that happened to us. Like, I remember her telling me, I'd go to Starbucks and I would tell them my name is Sally. And this one instance where this lady looked at her sort of like, you don't look a Sally. And she was offended. She said that I could look a Sally. I look a Sally. And we'd have these like funny moments and we would talk about these instances. And that's sort of where this book happened. I've been freelancing as a writer for a long time. And, people ask me, why don't you write a book? And I was like, I don't know. I'm an engineer. Let me just stick to what I studied and what I know. In 2013, I approached Shaima and I asked her if she wanted to do this little project, and just to see how it unfolded. We weren't sure if we could do it. We weren't sure about anything. We just wanted to give it a shot, and that's really how this book happened.
Well, and before you started this project with Shaima, what inspired you to start writing? I
was 12 when I lost my dad. My dad passed away and I was daddy's little girl, and I'm an only child, and I didn't know anybody else who'd gone through that experience, and I've never been a very vocal kid as far as my feelings are concerned, and so writing just happened to me, and I started writing poems, and a teacher in my school in India ended up seeing one of my poems, and then she encouraged me to write. And, I started emceeing events and hosting shows in school. And that's really how I got into writing. And when I came to the U.S., my stepdad is a software engineer, and he does a lot of web designs. And he asked me, hey, do you want to write content for my websites? And, I could give you pocket money to go buy Burger King or coffee or whatever you want in college. And that's how writing happened. And then I started looking for freelancing gigs once I graduated. But a lot of the freelancing gigs were more technical writing than creative writing. And that's when in 2013 I decided I wanted to write a book because I wanted to do something creative versus technical writing, which I was already doing as a full-time job being an engineer.
Mm. Well, and you look at both of those, I think it provides a lot of inspiration for, people who are maybe looking to write, or young people who are thinking, gosh, I'm going through a difficult time, because you get a lot of young people people still don't know how to express feelings. And so to be able to put, pen to paper or start writing on your computer, however you do it, is kind of a nice way of transferring that.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how I would have survived that experience in my life if not for writing and my dog. I have to give credit to my dog. But, honestly.
Yeah, I was a dog owner, so I get it, Our little buddies are so important,
Yeah, they're such good therapists. I have a German Shepherd, and yeah, he's my He's the best therapy I could ever have on a bad day.
Well, why don't you share with our listeners, and I'm so sorry about your father's passing, but why don't you share with our listeners what it was like for you growing up and coming to America?
I grew up in India in a very multicultural family. My grandmother is Anglo-Indian, which is a term for Europeans who came to India before independence and settled in India. And I always grew up in a multicultural home, and a lot of the things that we did in our house is very different than what my friends in India grew up with. Whether it was my grandma speaking three Indian languages meshed into one because she lived in 3 different parts of India and picked up parts of the language and spoke a language that was hers. And to me, it was normal because that's what I grew up seeing. So when my friends would come home, and that's sort of my first instance of cultural difference, I would say, when my friends would come home and say, "Oh, your grandmother speaks weird." And I'm like, "What do you mean she speaks weird? She speaks a language. I mean, that's my grandma, And so as a kid, it never seemed weird to me. And, everything, like we celebrated Christmas and, all these things that a lot of my other friends didn't necessarily celebrate. And I grew up there until I was 17, and I came to the U.S. when I was 18. 17 and a half, 18, because my stepdad got transferred from India to the U.S. for work. And so in 6 months, we decided that we were going to move to America, and we moved to California because that's where he was going to work. And I started college in California. And so I always say that I was forced to come to America. I had this hard story of coming to America, which I was forced, because, my parents wanted me to be with them. And as an only child, my mom was, she was very, very sure that, I had to live with her. And that's sort of how I came here. And I spent the next 2 years that I was here throwing tantrums because I didn't want to be here because I wanted to go back to India because my friends were in India. My life was in India. And they didn't budge. They thought I was acting, which was real, like I was acting. And then after 2 years, I sort of assimilated into the culture and got used to being here.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, California is a big state. So regardless where you are in California, I mean, Northern California can be a cultural shock. It's so different than Southern California. So, just coming to a new country itself, it must have been really, kind of difficult. And what were some of the things that really stood out for you that maybe were more difficult or easier than would be expected?
So when I found out that we were moving to the United States, I was very sure that the hardest aspect of our journey would be the technical aspects, right? The legal aspects, whether it's getting a visa, coming here, entering the country. That's what I thought would be the greatest challenge. So I still remember getting through San Francisco airport and thinking, oh, you know what? Everything's good. I mean, I entered the country. I grew up in India at a time when we listened to Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and, we watched Friends and, all the American shows. So I believed I knew America because, hey, Backstreet Boys knows America. Why can't I know that, But when we came here, I mean, the first thing I remember was, I came to this place called Pleasanton. And, it's a little newer town or city. And, the next day after we arrived, we were just walking to see our surroundings and get used to it. And I remember there was no one on the streets, which is like drastically different than India where, there's always people on the streets. There's 1 billion people. So, people walk on the streets. We as a culture walk more. We're not, not everyone owns a car, at least back in the day. And that was one of the biggest differences. And instantly I knew that I was in a different place because, I didn't see anybody around. And everything was challenging. For me, I think language wasn't a big issue, but I think I struggled with confidence. Even though I spoke really good English and I spoke English with a British accent back home, I lacked the confidence because I was always not sure if people could understand me here. And I remember in college I took a public speaking class where I was so scared to talk. And even though I'd emceed events back home, I wasn't sure if people could understand me. So I went through a struggle of sort of figuring out that can people understand me, in terms of my English. And food was challenging because I was extremely shy. I never ate in front of people. And here, eating out is a culture. People ask you out and they say, do you want to go to have lunch? And I would make excuses. And like, no, my mom's cooked food for me. I didn't know they were asking me out first. And so I had to get used to a lot of this. Fashion was a big challenge because I was a tomboy. I still am. I wore big jeans and big sweatshirts, and that's how I went to my first day at college. And the girls didn't look anything like me in terms of fashion. And, I had really short hair because I played basketball. And so I had to kind of find ways to be real to who I am versus being, as I call it, more America acceptable. So I think there was an assimilation period of about 2 years for me before I got comfortable being here.
Well, it's interesting the transition that people take. I mean, it's, school's difficult no matter what. And then if you add anything to it as a young person, maybe as you're talking, maybe not sure if people can understand you and there's cultural differences. I mean, it just really kind of compounds everything.
It does. And I think also and that's sort of where this book happened, because there is no book that really talks about what people go through when they come here. We talk so much about the legal and illegal aspects of immigration, which is very, very important. But once a person enters the country, nobody knows how an immigrant or a refugee goes about their life, just, assimilating into the culture. And, I didn't know that, like, before I came here, I didn't know that, people, speaking English would be a problem, especially because I spoke good English. Or I would struggle with, can this person understand what I'm saying, or dating, or all this that, when you come from an Eastern country, especially like a country like India, where dating is not the norm, you don't know when someone's asking, hey, do you want to get coffee, that they could be asking you out. I'm like, no, I don't want to have coffee. And, you sound so brashy because you don't understand what this person's trying to tell you.
Yeah, coffee has a whole nother meaning.
It does. And I didn't know that because this, in college, like this guy asked me to go to Starbucks, and for the longest time, like I think for months, I told him, no, my mom made coffee for me at home. Or, and the poor guy's like, this girl's so weird. So weird that I got to ask her again.
Well, and it kind of comes full circle because when we talk about America Deconstructed, in your book, you follow 16 first-generation immigrants and their cultural differences and the language and the barriers, and in many ways, even how America has changed. When you were looking at the different people for this book, how did you choose whose story would be included in the book?
I didn't choose. So the hardest part of this book was actually finding people to interview for the book. And I say that because as new writers and as people who come with this engineering background, I don't think people really thought that we could write. So that was the first thing. Even people that really knew me, and my co-author is not written much besides school work. But for me personally, when I never told anyone I was freelancing. So when I would approach people I knew saying, hey, do you want to interview for this book I'm doing? They would look at me like, you write? Really? So that was a big struggle. But besides that, so a lot of the people in the book are people that we knew in some capacity. Some people were family, some were friends of family, people that we worked with a lot of times. And some of the people in the book are actually people that we approached online. So one of the stories in the book is about a British lady named Molly. And I happened to come across her blog. She's an expat from Britain. And I actually approached her saying, hey, do you want to be part of the book? Because I read her blog, and a lot of the things she talked about in the blog resonated with me as someone who came from a predominantly British environment in India, because India has a big influence as far as Britain's concerned. And it just spoke to me, especially because she's married to an American and I'm married to an African American, and a lot of the scenarios were so similar. And another person, I actually just put an ad out saying I need European immigrants to interview for the book, and he just happened to respond, and that's how I got him. So the European immigrants are very hard to find because we just didn't know anybody that was from Europe that was an immigrant. And all the others were people that we worked with or were around in some capacity.
Well, and do you think that there's because this is a great time for discussion, especially when we talk about discussion of differences in immigrants and, just people coming to this country. Do you think we also need to have the discussion of creating a new identity for, immigrants that come here, giving them more of, I wouldn't say socialization, but just more support while they're here when they first arrive?
I don't know if they need support. I think it depends on the scenario you come here with, too, I think. If you have the family support like I did, or, if you come here with a support system, I think they already have a support system. What they really need, I think, is patience. Because, sometimes I usually observe my surroundings a lot. And sometimes you go and you see someone struggling to order food or order coffee or whatever it is. And you see people around just like get irritated and everybody's busy. And I understand that. But I think that what they need is patience, right? Or help in those regards. Like, hey, do you need to help you with something sort of thing, So, but socialization, I think it depends on the person, I think, and where you're coming from. Because I can say that for a lot of the Indians who come from India, they already have, India is a big country and most of the big cities are like the big cities in the U.S., They may not be similar. Now it's very similar, like Starbucks is in India. Everything is in India. People speak English. So the assimilation is easier now than when I came in, in the early 2000s when Starbucks was just about coming to India. Pizzas are just starting to come to India. So it's a different world now. Globalization, I think, has changed a lot of things than what it used to be. But I think what immigrants need is support in terms of patience, and, I think.
Yeah, because it's different when you look at, developing a new identity in a new country and being able to kind of feel like you have this sense of belonging. And so when people, arrive, I think it's important that we just have a little bit more patience and compassion and reach out because it could be very lonely.
Yeah, and honestly, I think being an immigrant myself, I think it's every person's journey is a lot different. Again, it depends on the circumstances you leave and you're coming here. And, I met a lot of people who are, my book has a story about a guy from Ghana who come here since he was a kid, and he still calls himself Ghanaian. He's like, Ghana's home for me, and his identity is very solid, just like me. I've lived here for 18 years, and I still say India is home, and my sense of identity and my roots are very strong. And I've met other people who've been here a lot lesser than me who say I am this American, like that's their identity. So I think for every immigrant and every person who comes here, it's the journey that they need to take to figure out what the identity is, how they want to define themselves. And it's a very, very personal journey, I think.
Yeah, it must be. What advice would you give new immigrants?
Patience. I think, for me, the only thing that worked was patience. It took me about 2 years, like I said, to assimilate into the culture, to even change my fashion where, I looked more like sort of a girl and not a tomboy that's a baller, or being comfortable ordering coffee or going to restaurants. And, people need to take their time. People need to be patient. You're going to have situations where, you might feel like people are laughing at you. Maybe they're not, but you might feel embarrassed. And that's okay. Everybody goes through that, and so I would say patience, just, going through whatever the days, just doing things that you're uncomfortable with, and eventually they'll get in your comfort zone. When you order coffee like 2 weeks in a row, you're at some point going to know what frappuccino and cappuccino is.
Yeah, it's interesting just the different things. And you talked initially about how they have like a difficulty in getting the names right. I mean, my name's Marianne, I get very different variations of spelling on that, or sometimes not even close. So, just how it is.
I'm a flag bearer for that. Like I used to go by my full name when I first came here, and then I got called all kinds of versions of my name to a point where one of my professors in college called me Chaithanya, and I'm like, all right, let me just shorten my name. So I usually introduce myself as Chaithanya, and then I say, you just call me Chai. Like, don't butcher my name, please.
Don't do that. Well, and that's really important. It's important to get people's names right. I mean, that's something. It's interesting. In your book, you also kind of mention about a cultural mix masala, and I would love for you to explain what is that to you.
So, Indian food has a lot of masala, right? What that means is a masala is a mix of different spices coming together, whether it's a chicken curry or anything else, right? Indian food is just a mix of spices, and that's sort of what I mean by cultural mix masala. My husband's African American. I'm Indian. I was raised in a house which was a multicultural household, with my grandma bringing her own culture into the family, and the rest of, my grandpa being Indian. And so it's always been a bunch of cultures coming together, and then we form our own sort of little world. And that's sort of what I mean by cultural mixed masala. Like when I married my husband, he's born and raised in Oakland, California, and, we had to go through our ways of figuring out how we were going to assimilate both these cultures and sort of blend in. And we live with my parents, who are Indian. And so even they went through a period, like I remember when we first got married, the day after we got married, my stepdad was prancing around the house, and I'm like, what happened? He's like, I don't know what he eats for breakfast, because we'd never eaten American breakfast before. And so I still remember we went to the store and we bought everything that we could find, bacon, sausage, whatever. And we're like, okay. And my mom's like, I don't know how to cook any of this. He's going to have to cook it. So, we went through this, growing pains. And so now my mom cooks whatever he needs. He eats Indian food all the time. And so, we came up with this whole mixed masala of African American and Indian and, made it our own. And that's what it means.
Yeah, really, developing your own culture within, not just your household, but kind of your community as well,
Yeah, and I mean, it's amazing because when we got married, he ate spicy food, but he didn't eat to our level. Now, everything he cooks, it has Indian spices in it, and my mom always jokes to him about it. Like, he was a guy that didn't know how to order Indian food in a restaurant when we were dating, and now he goes there and he tells his American coworkers or friends what to order, and he knows what's in it. And I'm like, wow, he's a seasoned veteran now.
Light years above everybody else in that.
Exactly.
Oh, well, and so with your book, America Deconstructed, what do you think it's important that people hear these stories, and what do you want the readers to take away from this?
So our whole goal with this book was to give a human face to immigration. And I say that because we don't hear about what happens when someone comes to a new country. And, we always talk about it as, in terms of this book, the stories are based in America. It's people who came to America. But when you think of it from a larger scale, you have cultural difference when you move from one state to the other. I've gone from one state in India to another when I was 12. And it was a huge cultural shock. So cultural differences can happen anywhere. And what we want people to take, or we want people to just be more tolerant. We want people, to, the next time you see an immigrant, just be tolerant and, be tolerant towards people's differences. It's important that we celebrate people's differences versus just trying to make 100 people that looks exactly the same, because then it's not fun. It's the differences that makes relationships fun, whether it's two friends. Like me and Shaima, we're poles apart. But that's what's the fun aspect of our relationship, and I think that's why we've survived so many years. And so we want to celebrate differences in people. And, these people, the 16 people in this book, came from different parts of the world, came from different circumstances, and we're trying to celebrate that. And that's what I hope people take from the book.
Yeah, and there's so much that can be gained from being able to connect with people of different cultures and really gain an understanding. Because when we do that, we get like this education that we wouldn't otherwise have.
And I think it's very important, that because, not everybody has the financial capacity to travel to all these places. But, it's important, I think, because when I came here from India, I've had people that have asked me, do you take showers on the street? And I'm like, why would I take a shower on the street? Because that's what media shows. Media shows the poorest of the poorest conditions and people taking showers on the streets or cows on the street. And people assume that the whole country is like that. And that's another thing that I hope my book can just change, because you have these people who lived in other countries talking about what life is like back there. And not every person in Africa or India is poor, or all of Africa is not poverty, or all of India is not poverty. And I just hope that people can read this book, take it as the first stepping stone, and hopefully go and learn more or travel, get to know these cultures or other cultures a little better. I hope that happens.
Well, there's something to be said about being a part of a melting pot, and I grew up in California, and I loved that there were so many different cultures and identities, and, it wasn't all the same, and I think there's a great education that comes from that. Well, Chaithanya, where can people connect with you and learn more about your book, America Deconstructed?
I have a website. It's www.chaithanya.com. So they can get a lot of information about me, about the book, about the books that I hopefully write in the future on there. My email's on there, so they can send me an email. Besides that, we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You could just search for the book because there's two authors. We decided to just create a book page sort of for a book account. And so if you just search America Deconstructed, they could follow us on there, and they could again email us or get in touch with us on there as well. The book is available for pre-orders on Amazon and everywhere else. I think bookstores around we're trying to contact them to have them carry the book, and a bunch of bookstores are going to have the book as well. It's available on Barnes & Noble as well.
Oh, well, congratulations, because I know this book is getting some really great reviews, and people are really enjoying your book. And
Thank you.
I would like to, oh, my goodness, yes, thank you. And, and thank you for taking the time to be with us here today and to talk with us about your book, America Deconstructed.
Thank you for having me. And, I had a lot of fun talking to you as well.
It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you, Chaithanya, and to talk about your new book, America Deconstructed. If you're interested in her book, you can find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. And also, if you'd like to connect with Chaithanya, you can at csohan.com, and we'll have the link below. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.